In this movie, we're going to take a look at the column types available in MySQL to handle the date and time. Let's go to our sample database and take a look at the complaints table. As we can see, we have 4 columns in there. Now, let's add a date and time column in which we can record exactly when a certain complaint was made. Before we do that, let's take all this data out of the complaints table, which we'll do with a delete statement without a where clause. Dangerous thing to do, but considering we just have 3 test rows in here, it doesn't really matter. Now let's use the alter table syntax to create a new column in the complaints table. And we're going to call our column when made. And the column type is going to be a new column type you haven't used yet, and that's datetime. This stores both the date and the time in a format which you're going to see very soon. Let's make that one not null. Now what happens when we insert into the complaints table? Let's specify the columns we want to insert into, and our new column, all the existing columns and our new column that we've just added, apart from the complaint ID, which of course will be auto-incremented. And we're going to specify some values for the customer ID, a level of rage with which they made their complaint, a reason why they're complaining, and finally we're going to insert a date and time into the when made column. Now we could manually insert a date and time in this format: year, month, day, and then the time. Alternatively, we could use this function, now. What this function does, it's a very handy little function. It inserts the date and time into that column without us having to check the time and find out what it is. I say that now is a very handy little function because it works not only with the date time column type, but also the other time and date columns that we're going to find out about later in this movie. For now, let's insert this piece of data into our complaints table and take a look at what the result is. Now, because the columns are slightly exceeding the size of the console window I have open, we're getting a bit of distortion here. So I hope you'll bear with me. You can still see, I hope, even though the row is wrapping around slightly, that the date has been entered and the time into the when made column. That's been done with our now function. So this is a very handy way of storing the date and time in MySQL. Just a moment ago I mentioned some more column types for handling the time and the date. Let's create a new table to show those different column types. Now this is a very arbitrary table format. We're just going to use one column per particular column type that handles date and time. So let's start out with a timestamp, and then a date time, which is the one we just discovered a moment ago, and then a simple date column, a time column, and a year column. These are MySQL's column types which handle date and time. Now, let's insert some data into our time demo table. We're going to put these values in. Now for the timestamp, now for the date time, now for the date, now for the time, and now for the year. As you can see, we're inserting into a whole range of different column types, but we're using the same function for each of them. That's why the now function is so handy. we don't really need to worry about which kind of date or time column type we're inserting into. We can just use this one function, and it will be interpreted in different ways depending on the column type in which it's entering data.